Hey English 345 students, welcome to week 9. And so this week we're going to be transitioning from the end of syntax into a new linguistic subfield, which is semantics. So taking a look at our course calendar, that's always a good idea to start our week with that. You finished up the last 2 assignments in syntax in module 4, so you did a few more syntax trees that I will be looking over this week and giving you some feedback on. You also watched the TED Talk by Leah Boroditsky about how language shapes the way we think, and I think that's a good transitional activity into our semantics unit where we think about the meanings of words and where those meanings come from. So this week you're going to be working on assignments 5.1 through 5.3. They're all due next Sunday, March 21st. Next week we'll move into pragmatics, which is another linguistic subfield. With these 2 subfields, we're just going to be focusing on each one for 1 week at a time because we want to try to fit in as many topics as we can to give you a good broad overview of linguistics as a field of study. Also next week in week 10, I want to remind you that your research project annotated bibliographies are due, so that still gives you like another 2 weeks to get it submitted. That's by March 28th. So the more you think about it, the more notice you have, the more you can better prepare yourself for that assignment. Okay, so let's head over to Module 5 and take a look at the 3 assignments you have for this week. Okay, so there's kind of a nice graphic here that introduces us to this unit. So you see language, and then underneath we have sounds, which includes phonetics and phonology. You learned about that back in the beginning of the semester. We then move down to form with morphology and syntax, and then meaning. So that's kind of where we're progressing with all these different linguistic subfields. And each one sort of builds upon the next. So you can see sounds moves into words, words moves into phrases and clauses, and then we start to get into another layer, which is meaning, and even the social use of language, which is pragmatics. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our module folder and see what we're going to be looking at this week. Okay, so the first one is a video. I think it's a great video for kind of giving an overall explanation of what the field of semantics is all about. It's about 20 minutes long. I think it really does a good job, though, of incorporating all the different aspects of the field of semantics that we need to know about. So once you're finished watching that video, you'll just click on the link and you'll have a series of questions to answer there. Okay, we can take a quick look at some of the questions that you'll see. So there are some true-false kinds of questions. There are other questions where you're going to notice you're going to be looking at some sentences that seem pretty nonsensical or that don't seem to be grammatical. And you're going to be talking about meaning versus syntax. So you can have, let's say, a perfectly syntactical sentence, but it doesn't really have any meaning. Or you can have a sentence where you understand the meaning, but it lacks good syntax. So that's one area you'll be learning about in the video. And looking a little bit further down, he goes over the example of just a simple word or concept like sword and how it seems like a simple concept, but there are many, many different ways to define that concept. There are small swords, big swords, swords with handles, swords without, some made with metal, some made with other materials. So it'll kind of change your way of thinking about how word meanings operate. Okay, so I won't go through all the questions, but those are just some different kinds of concepts you'll be learning about in that video. All right, let's go ahead and cancel out of that. And we'll move back into Module 5. All right, so moving on to our second assignment. So once you've got an overview of the topic, the next assignment you'll be looking at is 5.2. I've also included a graphic here as sort of a transition from assignment 5.1 to 5.2. And this graphic is just something that you can study on your own. It's right there in front of you and has nice bright colors to make you notice it. And as I tell you there, as a future researcher or a future teacher, professional writer or language teacher, think about what it means to know a word. And I think especially if you're going to be teaching or if you're going to be thinking about word choices in writing, I think these different definitions of what it means to know a word are really helpful to think about. So the experiences you've had with a word, what category it belongs to, how it's similar to other words, you'll learn about that in the video also, what it looks like, the opposite meanings of that word, how it sounds. There's all these different things that you can consider as you think about whether you know a word or not, or how you know a word. So if you are helping your students improve their word choices in their writing, these are things that you can communicate to them. Or if you're a professional writer and you need to convey a certain message to your audience, you've got to think about your word choices, right? The different connotations they might have, the different feelings they might convey. So I think this graphic is just a really helpful one as you move into those professions later on in your life. Okay, so 5.2 is elements of word meaning, and this one is going to be a reading from chapter 10 in the Essentials of Linguistics textbook. You're going to be reading section 10.1, words and meanings. And this one does have an embedded video, and she's going to be talking about things like extensions and intensions of different words, how we can have a general concept, a general category, and then how we can kind of apply that to similar words that fall into the same category. If we go ahead and take a look at the quiz that goes along with this, you'll see I've included some different graphics that'll help you think about this a little more deeply. Okay, so as we see here, we have an object and different ways you can think about describing that object, what it does, what its physical properties are. You could just point to it, of course. You'll see as you move a little bit further down, you're going to be learning about denotations and extensions. So you can have an overall concept, but have multiple ways of thinking about that concept, such as an expression like the President of the United States. A denotation, as you might have learned even in high school English classes, is the basic dictionary definition, the literal meaning of a word. But extensions are sort of like the various denotations that word might have. And you'll think about that in this activity. You might also think about different kind of, when we have an extension of a word such as berry, it can take on different forms, okay, just like we saw with the President of the United States above. Okay, and in the last question here, you'll also think about connotation versus denotation. So denotation, literal dictionary definition. Connotation is kind of like the feelings or emotions that word conjures up. So I'll have you complete a chart here where you're going to think about words and their positive, negative, or neutral meanings and what associations those words have for you. And you can think about your personal experiences with that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move out of here. Okay, we'll go back to the Module 5 folder. It takes a minute to kind of navigate around here. All right, and we'll go to our last of the semantics assignments, and that'll be 5.3. Okay, so 5.3 is going to be all about psycholinguistics of word meanings. Okay, and for this one, you'll just click on the link. It'll take you to a journal assignment where you'll see the instructions. Okay, so this one is going to be a reading from section 10.3 of chapter 10 in Essentials of Linguistics. I've given you some definitions to take a look at before you do that reading. And there were some definitions that were carried over from section 10.2. I didn't think you needed to read all of 10.2 to be able to look at 10.3, so I gave you some definitions and examples of these terms so that you know what they're about in section 10.3. Okay, so once you've read section 10.3, you'll click on Create Journal Entry up here in the top left corner. And in that journal entry, you'll answer a few questions about some experimental research that they talked about in this section. So psycholinguistics, which is yet another subfield of linguistics, so we're kind of even branching into another one in this section. In this reading, 10.3, Anderson talks about the ways that linguists or psycholinguists learn about how our mind organizes word meanings by doing different experiments. They're pretty interesting experiments called rapid naming tasks, lexical decision tasks, or primed lexical decision tasks. And basically what they figure out from doing these experiments is that people tend to react to words that are really good representations of certain categories of meaning in our brains faster than they would react to words that are less representative. So you might, if you think about fruit, you're probably going to react to apple faster than you'd react to avocado. So what this implies, though, for, let's say, language teachers, is that when you give students certain material or certain vocabulary words, let's say before teaching them more advanced ones, they'll actually learn the more advanced vocabulary better. So in question 5 of this journal assignment, you're going to be looking at one of 2 articles. I've given you 2 options there. So as it tells you in 5, the experiments you just learned about show how semantic relationships are organized in our minds. How might this kind of research be relevant in language teaching and acquisition, as I just mentioned? So you can take a look at one of those 2 articles and then explain what your chosen article shows about the role of priming in helping language learners, native or non-native, improve comprehension. So this doesn't just have to be about second language students. It can be native language students too. Many of you will be teaching high school English, I imagine. And so this will hopefully give you some good ideas about how you can help your students in the future. Okay, so those are our 3 assignments that are due this week by Sunday, March 21st. You'll also see here that I have the guidelines for the annotated bibliography. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at those yet, I'm going to go ahead and open them up and just give you a brief overview that'll kind of remind you that this is coming up and what you need to know about it. Okay, so March 28th, in that link it's actually the Module 5 folder, so I'll make a quick correction of that. When I first set up our course, the dates aligned more with Module 6, but in the final revision, it actually ended up being in Module 5. Okay, so the first part explains to you what an annotated bibliography is, and it can be in various citation styles. In some classes you might use MLA style, you might use Chicago style. In this class we're using APA. And the annotation of each of your sources basically consists of 3 parts. Summarizing the source, what the main arguments are, what the main points covered are. You're assessing that source. How useful is it in your overall research project? How does it compare with other sources in your bibliography? How reliable do you think the information is? What's the goal of it? And then you'll reflect on it. And you can use I to do this. You can talk from your own personal perspective. So how does it fit into your research? How does it shape your argument? What does it contribute to your source overall? Has it changed the way you've thought about your topic? Okay, so why should you write an annotated bibliography? To learn about your topic, of course, and I'll let you read through the details there. But one of the goals is that when you're preparing for a research project, a really good idea is to kind of prepare things step by step. So, you did that with a proposal in the beginning of the semester, and I gave you my feedback. Some of you have even come back to me for extra feedback, which is great. Over spring break, hopefully you got a jump start on your research and started to collect sources. And now at this point is when you're going to start to document the information from those sources and get them organized and cited. And once you get to writing the draft of your paper, you've got a bunch of material to work with, and you've hopefully got your citations down and correct, and you don't have to worry about coming up with those when you're drafting your paper. Okay, and of course another purpose of a bibliography is to help other researchers and extend your own research. So other people might want to read your bibliography if they're writing about a similar topic. You might consult other people's bibliographies on your topic and borrow some of their sources. That's a great way to extend your own research. Just type in your topic, your keywords that you're searching for, and add annotated bibliography to that. You might find bibliographies on your topic that you could use. Okay, so as far as the requirements, it is an APA style. If you go to the course documents folder, you're going to see all kinds of examples there in APA materials about how to put together different documents in APA style. So you should see some good resources there. Okay, the annotations are written in paragraph form, and each annotation should be about 100 to 125 words. So you'll incorporate those 3 items, the summary, the assessment, and your reflection on that source. Okay, it's important to see here that for the research project, you must have at least 5 sources in your reference list, at least 3 scholarly, 2 can be class readings. But this bibliography needs 6 sources, at least 4 scholarly, 2 can be supplementary sources. The goal of having 6 in the bibliography is that you have 1 extra and you can always drop one and maybe even add another one later if you need to. So 6 sources altogether for your bibliography. For grading, you can take a look at the annotated bibliography rubric in the course documents folder in Blackboard, so that will give you an idea of how that assignment will be graded. And once you're ready to submit your bibliography next week, you'll just come here to this Turnitin link, click on View Assignment, and there you go. And I'll remind you of where all of that stuff is for your bibliography in the course documents folder. So in APA materials, there's 1 entry here for that. Okay, you'll see a student paper. In APA 7th edition, you'll see a template for an annotated bibliography in 7th edition, and you'll also see a link to the Purdue OWL Guide to APA Style. So that should give you lots of good materials to work with to put together your assignment. As you're working on it, if you have doubts, if you have questions, if you want me to take a look at an annotation or a citation and give you some advice on the APA style and format, don't hesitate to let me know about that. All right, so I think that covers everything for this week with semantics and with your first steps on your bibliographies. Please let me know if you have any questions, concerns, or doubts, and have a great week. Bye-bye.